One of these is not like the other. Let's compare a NECA 2008 Mirage Comics Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles figure with a 2025 bootleg. To go straight to the comparison, skip to this timecode, otherwise enjoy this preamble. In 2008, NECA Toys in conjunction with Peter Laird and Mirage Studios began a line of TMNT figures based off the original Mirage comics. This was a big deal at the time as the toy license had exclusively been held by Playmates, who had specifically marketed the Turtles to a more child-friendly audience. To get turtle figures aimed at adult collectors was something of a novelty, and it clearly showed as these figures proved to be incredibly popular. Unfortunately, popularity breeds jealousy, and when Playmates saw how well these figures were doing, they pretty much pulled the plug on the whole thing. They didn't want NECA playing in their sandbox, and this line was seemingly destined for the grave. Fast forward to the present day, and if you're collecting these figures, you know how this story goes. Nickelodeon acquired the rights to the franchise, and now there's so many companies out there producing licensed turtle figures, it's really hard to keep track of. There were 6 versions of these comic figures made available officially. You had clamshell releases. These were individually packaged turtles that came with a slew of accessories. You had 2 packaging variants. These were bare bone releases of the individual turtles that lacked the accessory. And then you had 4 box set versions, 2 coloured versions and 2 black and white versions. Each set came as either a bare bones release with the 4 turtles and their signature weapons, or you could get a limited edition set which also came with all the accessories found in the clamshells. These versions were exclusive to San Diego Comic Con. All of these official releases now go for some hefty sums on the aftermarket, but the limited edition SDCC 4 packs are the ones that tend to be the more sought after due to their limited production run. Now, when NECA originally discontinued the line, bootlegs started to appear on the market. There were 4 generations of bootlegs. Whilst the first generation was quite good, it became easier over time to identify these bootlegs. For starters, they all came in tube packaging. There were no clamshell versions at the time and no box set versions. And as of this recording, there are still no box set bootlegs. They also released versions of the Turtles with their marketing colours. Where the original releases stayed true to the comics by having them all wear red bandanas, the bootlegs tended to favour the more identifiable coloured bandanas synonymous with the cartoons, movies and most other incarnations, although it was still possible to find all red versions. As you can see from these pictures, you can tell the quality of the plastic deteriorated across the generations. The turtles moulded in the darker green plastic, their plastrons were a lighter yellow, the black inking was not as good, the shells were more of a teal colour. In general, these made it a lot easier to identify a bootleg from an official release. You knew what you were getting when you bought these on the aftermarket. In January 2025, what appeared to be official re-releases of these figures started to appear on AliExpress. This caused a bit of buzz in the turtle community. Had a batch been found somewhere in a warehouse? Had NECA re-released these after adamantly saying they never would? Or had someone just made some really good knockoffs? It's that one, yeah. So if I haven't bored you to death by now, we come to the point of this video, a compare and contrast of an original 2008 release with the new 5th generation bootleg. All that information I've given should hopefully give you a primer for why I wanted to do this. It was a combination of curiosity, boredom, but more importantly, there are a lot of bad faith actors out there. Someone might try to pass a bootleg as an original, and as I said, original figures go for a hefty price these days, so hopefully this video will help you distinguish between what is real and what isn't. On the right is the original 2008 release, and on the left is the new bootleg. I got it off AliExpress. It cost about £20 in the old English money, that's just under $30, and on first glance the casual observer might not see much difference. The packaging is very well done, the bootleg itself looks pretty solid, but we'll take a look at the two side by side in packaging first, go over all the obvious differences, ones that should help when identifying a bootleg from an original release. Then we'll open up the bootleg and take a look next to an OG figure and see how it stacks up. So let's start with the obvious differences here, twisty tie locations. On this original release you can see there are twisty ties at the neck, legs and the hands. On the bootleg here, you can see there is only one twisty tie, and that's around the waist. There are no ties around the neck, feet and hands. That's an easy one to start off with. Here's a side-by-side comparison. The next difference is that this baby turtle accessory is not taped down in the original, whereas in the bootleg it is sellotaped down and is also a slightly lighter colour. The next difference we can see here is that on this fire hydrant accessory, on the original release there is black ink in, and the plastic itself is generally of a better quality. And on the bootleg here, you can see there is no black outline in. Now the swords are an interesting one. We'll cover them in more detail when we open up the bootleg, but as you can see on the original release here, the sculpting on these swords is of a better quality. The diamond shapes are more pronounced, and the paint apps are better. Whereas on the bootleg here, the details are somewhat lacking. The paint jobs are of less quality. As I say, we'll go into more detail on this when we actually open them up, because there's something else about these swords which can help you identify them as an original as well. Back to the figure itself, and on this Leonardo figure, on the original release, the knee pads have black inking on them, and they are also two different knee pads. Whereas on this bootleg release, you can see there is no black inking on them, and the knee pads are actually both right knee pads. They're both the same, there is no individuality between them. And here we have what is probably the easiest way to spot a new clamshell bootleg from an original, and it is a spelling mistake on the bottom. You can see here on the original that Mirage Studios is spelled correctly, whereas on the bootleg it is spelled Studiso. So there you go, that's a very easy way to tell a bootleg from an original as well. So that's all the obvious differences in packaging. I'll mention the belt in a few minutes as there are some differences there too, but let's now open this bootleg up and take a look at the figure in hand. So here we have them both out of packaging. We have the original on the right and the bootleg on the left, and initial impressions, this bootleg is pretty solid actually. When you have them side by side you can tell the differences, but generally speaking, if you're after a cheap alternative and you're not prepared to fork out wads of cash on an original, I'd recommend picking up one of these. You can tell the differences, like I say, the plastic on the bootleg is shinier, some of the paint apps here are different. The belt for example is a lighter brown and the black inking does not match the original. I'm also going to point out here that black inking on the scabbards looks pretty close to the original, but if I show you the tops here, on the original the holsters are painted completely black, whereas on the bootleg they've been left brown. Again here, the black lines on the belt on the bootleg do not match up. I didn't point this out on the inbox review because I'm not 100% sure if this is an issue across all bootlegs. And with paint apps like this, your mileage may vary depending on the bootleg and the original. But here is a difference that you wouldn't spot in packaging. This bandana on the original, the plastic of the tails on this bandana is softer and also non-removable. And if we look at the bootleg here, the tails are made of a slightly thicker plastic and are actually removable. Another difference here, and again this is something that varies from figure to figure, the original figures have an ab crunch, and as I demonstrate here on my Donatello figure, they also should have a waist swivel. Now my Leonardo doesn't swivel, probably because it needs heating up, and I'm terrified of putting too much stress on it now as it's nearly a 20-year-old figure. But on this bootleg here, you can see there is a gap in the ab crunch. Now again, I don't know if this is across all bootlegs, as this is the only one I have, but that ab does not crunch. However, the hips do swivel, but as I say, I can't be 100% certain if this is the same across all bootlegs. And here I'm just showing off the articulation on the bootleg. It is pretty much the same as the original release. I have noticed while posing this guy around that the plastic is a lot softer, a lot gummier, so it is easier to move joints around on this one. With the original release, I don't want to say it feels more brittle, but there is a different feeling to them. Tension in the joints, and there is worry you could break them if you're not careful. Also, on this bootleg you can see the legs are much looser. I would attribute that to the production and quality of the plastic, but here on the original you can see the joints are a lot tighter, the legs do not flap about as much. Another difference you can see here on the bootleg, these feet are not flush. I'm not sure if that's due to plastic shrinkage, mould shrinkage, what have you, but on this original release you can see the join between the feet and calves looks so much better. And I'm just demonstrating the soft plastic on the plastrons. Here on the bootleg it feels softer. So here we have the two swords. On the right is the original release and on the left is the bootleg. Here you can see the details on the original are a lot crisper, the paint application's less sloppy. Something else about this original release not present on the bootleg is that you can remove the tip of the handle, and that was a deliberate design choice by NECA to make it easier for you to put the weapons into the hands of your figures. If you look at the top of this bootleg here, you will see that the tip is not removable no matter how hard I try. The handle is all one piece of plastic. So there's another difference if you want to identify these weapons. And here is a picture comparing them side by side, and you can definitely tell the differences when you have them next to each other. So there we go, that was a look at a 5th generation bootleg of a 2008 NECA Mirage Comics TMNT figure. Hopefully this video is able to help guide you when trying to distinguish an original from a bootleg. As for the bootleg itself, it's a fine substitute. If you're after a cheap alternative and don't mind the small inconsistencies, you could do a lot worse. Let me know if there's something I missed in the comments. I tried to cover as much as was relevant to the video's intent. Thanks for watching, until next time, goodbye.